So, this is an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about. We've got Americans fleeing big cities. It's always brought up in arguments. Everyone's fleeing LA. Everyone's fleeing New York. We're going to look into it. Is it actually happening? And also, if it is happening, why? You can see in 2021, California exodus is what they're calling it. And now it's a new trend. California's population is still shrinking. According to the latest population estimates from the U.S. Census, California's total population declined by more than 500,000 between April 2020 and July of 2022, right in line with the pandemic. That's, I'm sure, part of it, but there's a lot of factors at play. Take a look at percent change in the United States population, July 1st to July 1st, 2021 to 2022, you can see the red is the states that are losing population. You know, you're talking about California. You're also talking about, looks like Louisiana, as well as Pennsylvania, New York, and a darker shade of red, Illinois as well. A lot of people leaving Chicago. And then the states they're going, a lot of people going to Florida. A lot of people going to Texas, a lot of people going to Idaho, and then these are the official numbers, and boy, it is an interesting pattern. You can't help but notice Florida, pretty Republican, at least recently, Idaho, Republican state, South Carolina, Republican state, Texas, Republican state, South Dakota, Republican state, Montana, Republican state, Delaware is Democrat, but it's very small. Arizona is a purple state, swing state. North Carolina, I would say swing state. Utah is Republican. Tennessee is Republican. And I guess Georgia is a swing state. But overall, seems like we've got Americans migrating to the more Republican states. And then the places that they're leaving, New York, Illinois, Louisiana, Virginia, they're both on the right. But Hawaii, Oregon, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, California, Maryland, the more liberal states. Kind of an interesting trend. Taking a look at the overall net migration, total positive, Florida and Texas, 2022 by far in first and second place, picking up, both over 300,000 people in total population growth. And then you do have North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Arizona, Tennessee, and then Washington. So really interesting stuff, interesting trends looking at the bottom. I mean, New York, California, Illinois, people leaving the big cities. Why are they doing it? I think it's a few different factors. I do think Americans are starting to realize that, especially younger Americans, that living in the big cities is just not worth it. And when I would argue with these people, it was always such an extreme debate to where I would say, listen, big cities, you get less room and you have to pay more. How is that better? Even if you're a younger person, you want to live with other people, you could, 15 minutes away from the big city, you could find a bigger space for less money and still live with your friends, and it would be totally, perfect, and you would commute for 15 minutes, and it's just such a better living experience. And the argument that I got was, oh, you're going to live in the middle of nowhere, when it's not that extreme at all. Even a city that has a population of like 15, 20K, they're going to have a Starbucks, they're going to have, a Walmart, they're going to have a Target, they're going to have everything you want. And I do think the left, some of these Democrats, you take a look at a recent CNN article, they're still not understanding, they're still trying to cope, they're just blaming the pandemic. Yes, I do think the pandemic was partially the cause, but the recent CNN article was talking about why is Walmart leaving all the major cities? 4 Walmarts closing in Chicago. Just pretty remarkable that even happens, that 4 Walmarts in the same area. And then you also had bigger clothing stores close in and around these major cities like San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, places like that. Why are they doing it? And then they barely talk about the crime, which is a huge reason, especially why Walmart would close 4 stores. They barely talk about the crime. They talk about, oh, it's online shopping. That's what's causing it. Yeah, that's not what's causing it. The big issue a lot of Americans are having, guys, let's be honest, a lot of us do not commit crimes. Even if we can go and steal $900 worth of crap, we're not going to do it. And then the argument against that is, oh, the people that are stealing really need it. That's not the point. You cannot run a society where you allow people to steal things from stores. I don't care if it's a big corporation worth billions of dollars. Overall, the citizens will end up suffering, not the corporation, right? It's just like, oh, you're going to defend a big corporation. It's not about that. If you allow people to go into stores and just walk in and take stuff for free, you will not have a healthy society. And that's the exact thing we saw with New York, California, Illinois. Those big cities completely alienated the police force. The police don't want to do their job because they feel like no one wants us here. Why would we even enforce anything? And they're just completely overwhelmed. It's got to be demoralizing. And then if you're a normal, law-abiding American citizen living in one of these major cities, paying the ridiculous rates to even live there in a small apartment where it costs $3,000 for 2 bedrooms, you're also having to deal with this crime. And if you get robbed, guess what? Flip a coin on if the cops will show up or not, because they've been completely alienated. Everyone just calls them racist now. You have to. The only way you reverse these trends in these major cities when you're talking about population loss, the only way to get people back, you have to develop a better relationship with the police force. There has to be an extreme police presence in these big inner cities, and it's like you're seeing the same thing just get worse. Like Chicago, Illinois, the way they're voting, they got the woman out, the mayor, she was terrible, Lightfoot. Well, apparently the person they put in is even softer on crime. So people are leaving Chicago, but the ones staying before they leave are still voting for the same stuff. And that's the reason why they're leaving. It makes no sense. You have to vote for something different if you want anything to change. All of these numbers show rapid decline, and then people take anecdotal stuff like, oh, Chicago's still great. I'm sure there's great parts of Chicago. Chicago is huge. Of course there is. There's great parts of San Francisco. There's great parts of all these major cities. But it's the overall trend of people realizing it's just not worth it. These major cities are just a cesspool of huge crime, and it costs way more money to live here. Why would we do that? And you can see the overall migration to Florida, Texas, and also people going to North and South Carolina as good places as well. Tennessee also up there, Georgia, and I have seen Arizona as one of the bigger states that people go. There's the change in population. You can see Florida getting a ton of people with all that green. It's going to be harder to see the major shift in terms of purple because it's just like 1 or 2 counties that have all the population in some of these states. But you can see tons of people going up to the Midwest, going to Idaho, going to Montana. You know, a lot of people heading up that way. Also, you have people heading to Nevada as well. San Francisco, for example, lost a staggering 7% of its residents. You can see the state population in 2022. The blue are the gainers. The yellow, I guess the orange are the losers. The big gainer, Florida, Texas, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North and South Carolina, Delaware. The big losers, the major population centers, Chicago, Illinois, San Francisco, Los Angeles, California, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City. There's a clear trend in this country, but it's like these people don't change their voting patterns. They still vote for the soft on crime politicians. Nothing's going to change. The numbers are going to keep getting worse until you realize your mistakes, you stop alienating the police, and, maybe something can be done. Living in a big city, especially a city like New York, I could never do it. I think a lot of people feel the same way. It just doesn't make sense financially. It doesn't make sense in terms of, you want space. And even paying for a 1-bedroom apartment's like $2,000 or $3,000, and now you've got all these young people who want to live in these major cities. They've already got $30,000 of student loan debt, and then they say, yes, give me the $3,000 1-bedroom apartment. That's going to make sense, as you got like an unpaid internship at some tech company. It's just not a good way to start off your life. Texas is the state top Californians are moving to. So this is the whole idea. Are the people from California really going to make Texas liberal? According to a survey from 2009 to 2019, Texas has been the #1 destination for departing Californians within the last decade. During that time period, about 68K moved to Texas. And just for example, this was the Trump versus Biden. When you talk about 60K in the last decade, you can see it's really not going to make a huge difference. Like, people keep thinking Texas is going to be Democrat. Even if those numbers rise more, you're going to have to, if you're a Democrat and you want to win Texas, you're going to need independents to swing more rapidly in your favor if you want to win. Because even if they get like another 100K, I mean, Trump beat Biden by 6 points total and by like right about 500,000 total votes. So there would need to be, I mean, I would say with a trend like that, you would be looking at the mid-2030s if you're a Democrat possibly winning Texas. Population losses, while New York City remained the city with the largest numeric decrease, its population decline in 2021 was nearly 6 times its numeric decrease in 2019. Chicago had a similar experience, still ranked third with a numeric decrease of right around 45,000 in 2021. Its population dropped by only 7,000 in 2019. So there is a major, you know what it is, man? 2020, the pandemic, the BLM riots, the alienation of the cops, that all plays into these numbers, and now they're rapidly going down. Seems like in 2019, there were a few people that were leaving, and slowly but surely we were seeing a decrease in the populations of the major cities, but all the events of 2020 have put that on steroids, and everyone is moving out. And again, the problem is they're not voting differently, so you're still going to have the same issues. When you have people that are soft on crime, you incentivize crime, there's going to be more criminals in the area. Most normal people in America, the only way we're going to be dealing with police outside of a, traffic stop or whatever is if somebody victimizes us. So why would we live in a big city where we're going to have to flip a coin if we get something stolen that the cops would even investigate? Why would anyone do that? It just makes no sense. So that's why I think a lot of Americans are wising up. And then on top of that, there's also the idea now, because, maybe you have remote work, you can move around easier, you can move to other places, you don't have to live in a big city, you don't have to pay the ridiculous amount in overall rent or, whatever your living situation is. But that wasn't even the argument 3 or 4 years ago. They've changed the argument. The argument was, oh my God, there's nothing to do in small cities, they're crap. They don't feel that way anymore. But that was the original argument that they had when people would discuss this. It was like, oh, you got to live somewhere, you got to live in the moment, there's nothing to do. Well, this is what happens. And now, you've got these big cities that have been completely overrun in a total cesspool of crime, and it's not going to get better because they won't even admit it's a huge problem. They're like, oh, Walmart is leaving. CNN says Walmart is leaving 4 stores in Chicago, Illinois, or around the area. It's because of online shopping. Oh, yeah, that's why Walmart's leaving. Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, dude, closing 4 stores in the same area is crazy. That's an epidemic of crime. That's what that is. But either way, guys, it is interesting to see the population trends in this country favor the right so much. Even if you are a liberal, this is just the reality of it. I mean, it is crazy. It's basically 9 out of the top 10 states people are going to the past few years have been Republican states. Everyone's leaving the cesspool big cities because they're realizing it costs more, and you're going to deal with higher crime, and the criminals are likely not even going to be prosecuted. What's the point? Also, I do think, yes, there is remote work. That is helping people be able to move into kind of suburban places that are outside, and you don't have to worry about commuting, things like that. But either way, guys, this trend, I don't see it changing. I don't I don't understand the idea of anyone right now getting excited to move to a big city and pay the ridiculous prices, because nothing's changing. They're still electing Democrats. They're still electing, these far left people. I know Eric Adams might have been someone a little bit different to where he's a Democrat, but he's tough on crime. And he's kind of butted heads there in New York City, so maybe he'll do something. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.